Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to today's Open Metadata Community Meetup. We're here with December 2025. Really excited to get started today. We'll just take a couple seconds to allow everyone to come in. As you're joining our meetup today, please let us know where you're calling in from. So I'll be attending from Los Angeles. Good to see you all. Okay, I think if everyone is ready, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to this month's Open Metadata Community Meetup. It's great to have you here as we close out 2025. It's been a great year for Open Metadata, and it's been exciting to see our community grow, and we really wanted to highlight some of those things today. So we've got a very full agenda for you in this meetup. We're going to be covering metrics and updates. If this is your first Open Metadata Community Meetup, we like to start them with how the open source community has grown since our last meetup. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently today with a very packed agenda, and I'll just very quickly breeze through our metrics for this month before having David Backx of Dataroots come in and do a community spotlight about how he's been implementing Open Metadata. We have an AskCollate introduction. You'll be seeing a great demo with a number of different personas and how different members of your organization in different roles can interact with AI in order to leverage metadata to perform their work. Before taking a look at Open Metadata Wrapped, like a streaming service, and recapping some of the year's growth and some of our favorite statistics from the year. And then we'll, as always, have a Q&A at the end. Feel free to get those questions in now or throughout our meetup, or we can certainly cover them at the end. So one thing that I wanted to cover on our community metrics for this month, another thing that I wanted to call out, we shared this last community meetup. We had a milestone where it was our fastest time between 1,000 stars. So we gained 1,000 stars in 130 days. And our last meetup was right as we were at 8,000 stars. And we're forecasting out that our next 1,000 stars will be happening even faster. Since our last meetup, we've gained over 200 stars, and we're really on pace to set another record again in a milestone, the quickest time between gaining 1,000 stars. That really starts to see some of the momentum that we've been experiencing in the Open Metadata community. And giving Open Metadata stars just a really easy way to show support and provide awareness to the work that everyone is doing to build this as the best place to work with your metadata. So we have a number of other metrics that I won't be able to cover today, but just wanted to share an update how things are going as we wrap up the year, and then wanted to also thank all of our contributors that have been adding code to the Open Metadata project over the past month. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Backx. He'll be showcasing how he's using Open Metadata. Thanks, David.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I'll be sharing my screen quickly. Okay, so if all correct, you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm David. I'm David, a data engineer currently working for a consultancy company, Dataroots, located in Belgium. Currently working for a project for the VRT, which is the public broadcaster in Belgium, where I'm part of the data and intelligence department. We're maintaining and expanding a modern data platform with a focus on data governance and data quality. We also closely work together with some data teams and a lot of business domain teams as well. So to get started with the talk, does this sound familiar to anyone? I'm guessing yes, because we all kindly work together with data. We have some kind of reported breaks, customer-facing application is impacted. A lot of teams, they get together, trying to locate the issue. And after a few hours, we can come to the conclusion that a business user has inputted inconsistent metadata, no metadata, the wrong metadata. It's understandable given the growing complexity of all the systems, but it costs a lot of time, money as well for all the people working on it. And in the end, it has customer impact, which we should avoid at any cost. So there's really a lot of importance on keeping this metadata correct and consistent. So how does this kind of take shape in broadcasting? We have a lot of different teams who have all kinds of different data. Think about series, shows, movies, articles, but also podcasts. So we're already working with a lot of different data. This all gets put into a content management system, where then the business users also put in the metadata of the data. And this kind of flows through a lot of different touch points. For example, we have a streaming service, but also a page where all the articles of the news are shown, and many, many more touch points. So why is fixing this a challenge? Business units often they lack the technical skills or even access to perform these analysis on data quality test cases. So it's really our job to provide them with all of the specific information of the test case. Also, the business users, they own the knowledge, but not really the tools. For example, making some customization of a content management system is difficult, and it's also something you really don't want to do. And also, the goal is also to really inspire ownership towards the business owners, to make them the owner of the data. So in the end, that they can implement the fix as well. So this is also really important. So with the help of OpenMetadata, the data quality tests, we were able to do to identify the elements where the metadata wasn't consistent or could cause issues. For example, I did an example of if you have some kind of Christmas special, you don't want it to show up where all the normal episodes are shown, for example. This could be the result of metadata being incorrect and also then having impact on the customer. So the first solution which we tried out was an open metadata alert that a data engineer would receive. The data engineer would then go and query the data and do some analysis on it, send it to the SPOC team or the business team, who then could implement a fix. Now, this didn't really got the results we wanted. The data engineer quickly becomes the bottleneck because of the growing test cases. Also, context switching is difficult. Takes up a lot of your time, and they don't have time to focus on their own tasks. Also, there's no really ownership towards the SPOC team. It's more of an annoyance towards them that we always send them like, hey, this kind of failed. Can you look at it? So there's no ownership, more of an annoyance for them. So another solution that we tried out was an open metadata alert again. But then now we added a URL to the alert, which then gets sent to the SPOC team and not to the data engineers anymore. They could then look at the report and find out where the missing or the inconsistent metadata is. This was also not the desired solution because it was yet another report we had to keep in sync with all of the growing test cases that we have. Also, it didn't really inspire urgency towards the business owners. And again, we still have multiple steps before we can come to a fix. And also the quality of life isn't that good because it's another report you have to manage. So we got to thinking, what would the ideal solution look like? And also why do we want to tackle this? I mentioned in the beginning already the possible impact of inconsistent metadata. So it's important because it could have customer or consumer impact and also on heavily used reports. Also, we want the ownership on the business owner on the business side and and don't have engineers as a middleman. Also, how could we achieve adoption? You need one point of truth, like one source of truth. In our case, it's OpenMetadata, else I wouldn't be here. It should also be easily configurable and scalable because of all of the growing test cases that we have. Ideally, it would also be customizable per use case. And very important, it should also stay within the client ecosystem. We don't want any third party interacting with the data. It should all stay within our ecosystem. And also the quality of life should be very high because we don't want it to be neglected after some time. So what would this solution look like? We came up in the end with an email, a multifunctional email triggered by a webhook. So it looks like the following. Still have an open metadata data quality alert. That's when gets triggered. It creates an email with all the needed information for the business users to act upon this and implement a fix. So I'll quickly go over the architecture of what we set up. Sorry. So we start with a failed data quality test. This you could specify an external destination. In our case, it's a webhook. And in the background, it's a Lambda function, but this could be any kind of cloud function. First step is to parse the given event and also fetch the test type. We have multiple tests. If you ever used metadata, you have built-in tests where you can specify custom SQL tests, but also they have some pre-built tests for you. And we also have DBT tests. That's an external tool, which you can also put in OpenMetadata. So the next step for DBT test, we save the artifacts, so we can just fetch the SQL back from there. From custom SQL, the SQL is sent into the event, so we don't have to do anything there as well. But for built-in tests, we have to know what kind of test it is. For example, column cannot be null, stuff like that. We don't get it, so we fetch it from the API first, and then through some config, we can get the SQL back. We run it through our data warehouse. Athena in this case, Athena saves the output to a bucket. The function retrieves that data and then creates the email with the results as an attachment. So the setup of this, once the architecture is in place, which I just show, it's very easy. It can scale to multiple kinds of data quality tests, as I shown before. And also, once you have everything in place, it takes like 30 seconds to set this all up. So for destination, external webhook. And we also specify email receivers because we want some more flexibility on who we want to send the email to. We don't always want to rely on the owners of the data quality tests. So very quick to set it up. Now, how does it look? Here you have a screenshot of the test case. As you can see, top left, we have the CSV with the data in there. As I mentioned in the beginning as well, we want to be as customizable as possible. We can do this through custom SQL code. To give an example, in this test case, we were sending IDs back to the business user. We went and talked with them, and they said a URL would be way more efficient for them. It would remove one extra step to get to a resolution. So this was done through that. Also, we have a lot of contextual information in there. Think about the description of the test case, time of failure, but also the result you see in metadata itself. For example, you will often see expected 0 rows, but found 20. Something like that is also in the email. And then also some links to to up the quality of life. Link back to the test in OpenMetadata. If maybe you're a business user, maybe you want to have a better look at the test. But also links to the query engines. Maybe if you're a bit more analytical, you want to go do some further investigation, that's also possible. And also the SQL code is also added in the email for some more observability. So we discussed this solution with the business owners. As I mentioned earlier, we discussed what kind of data they need to really quickly solve this test. And this also was quite insightful. So then on launch, we saw a big improvement. Errors got resolved. But this is also quite artificial because we told them, hey, we're going to implement this. We're going to do a cleanup. So this was kind of expected that it will all be go green. But then after a few more days, we saw that another error popped up, and it like instantly got fixed. So this was kind of a proof that our solution was working for them. So new issues getting fixed immediately. Also, there was no intervention on our part. We didn't send them any extra information about the test case. They did really resolve it by themselves. And also, it kind of shows that they took ownership of the data and of the test case. So we were really happy that they fixed it on their own. So to look back, before the data engineers were the middleman, now they are freed up of that, and they can focus more on their core tasks. Also, the owners, they couldn't really react independently, but now they can take up responsibility and agency towards their own data. And also there were multiple steps after an alert. Now this is shortened, and the number of steps for a resolution is also way less than before. Okay, with that, I want to end this initiative. We're also doing some other initiatives with open metadata. For example, increasing test coverage with some reasoning models, but also leveraging GenAI as a lot of other companies as well for doing automated pre-analysis of our failed data quality tests and many, many other initiatives, which we may share in some other spotlight events. With this, I will hand the floor back to you, Nick. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks, David. That was great. It was great to see how you all are, constantly in, removing steps and removing those barriers and making it a more efficient process to that resolution. I really appreciate the efforts there, and
Thank you.
seems like it's great results, from it. So, thanks a lot, David. Excited to see that, and would be more than happy to have you come back, as you mentioned, as those new initiatives get tackled. But next, I wanted to bring Pere into our meetup, and we're going to be showing AskCollate. So, Pere, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And yeah, thank you, David, for the amazing demo. Let me jump to this slide. Okay, awesome. Great. So as we know, the data landscape is changing rapidly, right? Every day there's new sources, new data that we have to ingest, new ways that we can move this data from layer to layer in order to create dashboards, ML models, whatever it is that we need in order to drive and create value in our organization. But it's not only the data that keeps growing, it's also the complexity of the data and the complexity of the platforms that we're interacting with. So a fundamental challenge is that all of this critical knowledge ends up siloed in all of these different tools owned by many different teams. And we are lacking kind of this global 360 view of what it is that it's happening in our organization, right? So this work that we have pioneered with OpenMetadata and Collate over the past few years has been actually focused on addressing this exact problem. How can we make sense of all of this scattered information? So we have been able to accomplish this by defining and implementing an open source metadata standard, right? This allows us to effectively translate each piece of information from all of these different systems, be it your warehouses, be it your pipelining systems, your dashboard systems, basically just gather all of that information and translate it, put it into a single source of truth. And bit by bit, while we keep gathering this information, we have been building this metadata graph that it's covering your entire stack, which in the end is there to empower our users with seamless data discovery, data observability, as David was showing just now, as well as data governance. So this has become the main foundation of OpenMetadata. This API and this schema-first implementation of these standards that are allowing us to create a very extensible architecture so that each organization can plug in the relevant pieces of information from anywhere in their data ecosystem. Now, once this data is centralized, that's great, but we need to understand that data alone does not really solve any problems because actually data does not live in isolation, right? Data only gains value when it's contextualized within your organization and within your business, which means that we should not stop at understanding the data. We should actually go one step beyond and figure out how is this data being used, who owns this data, what's the impact of each specific asset, what's the impact of a specific change that I need to do. And not only that, but actually the questions and the answers that different user personas are going to expect from our data is also going to be different because the use case, the technical capabilities, the projects, the goals from a data scientist, a data engineer, or a data analyst are going to be completely different. But in the end, they should still be able to work together on a single tool, leverage this unified experience, and build solutions on this single source of truth for everything that's happening around the data in the organization. So if we have been able to actually build this experience for people, this means that, okay, we should also be able to bring all of this context for AI tooling as well. So what we are bringing on top of the table now with Collate is this ability to transform this unified knowledge graph into knowledge units that go far beyond of giving the LLM access to the schema of our tables, but actually contextualizing this schema and this metadata, these technical pieces of information with the importance of an asset within our organization, the specific meaning, thank you to the integrations with tools like the glossary or the knowledge center, or even how are all of these pieces of information currently being used, who owns them, and how this information flows and is transformed through our pipelines. And we are not only able to achieve this via the embeddings and whatnot, but actually by leveraging the organization's vocabulary and all of these super rich and complex relationships that are actually representing the reality of our business, of our data, of our people, right? That's why we announced in our past summit, we announced AskCollate, which is this AI agent that it's providing conversational analytics and data management capabilities that it's built on top of this knowledge graph foundation that we have in there. Now, to illustrate the power of this system, let us consider a common business objective. Let's imagine that we're a company and we are trying to improve our customer experience and optimize the revenue for a new product, line. So we would have all of these different personas scattered across the organization, and they will be focused on answering questions around this data, but we will demonstrate even how these different personas can achieve all of their goals within the same platform. Now, as a data steward, this is going to be my first step, right? I need to make sure that we are properly organizing the information in our data platform. So to do so, I'm going to get help from AskCollate to figure things out quickly. Now, my first step will be, okay, do you have an information that is describing our customer data? So I'm going to ask this to AskCollate, and it's going to search and pick up any relevant pieces of information that I have across the platform. And what I can see here is that we have a bunch of tables about customers, but I can also see an interesting article. So I can say, okay, AskCollate, can you please give me further details about this article here? So the interesting part is that AskCollate is not only answering questions based on our structured data. It's not only about tables or dashboards or pipelines, but also is actually able to reason and understand this free-form text that we have previously defined in the knowledge center. So that this means that it's now actually kind of easier than ever to pull up what our policies, our how-tos, any kind of relevant documentation that it's going to make our lives easier around data. So now I let the agent pick this information. It's giving me a summary of this article. I can directly jump now into the knowledge center. I can dig a bit deeper into the information, and I can see that there's actually some relevant pieces in there that I might want to pull the thread upon. And this is where the even more interesting part comes into play, because now I can ask AskCollate to say, okay, I want you to transform this information that you've pulled here into customer glossary terms. So what it's going to happen here is that I'm taking all of this unstructured content, all of this free text that I've put into my knowledge center, and I'm going to be able to structure it in a way, position it within our knowledge graph so that I can continue to activate this knowledge, to use this knowledge within my organization, so that whenever AskCollate has finished creating all of these glossary terms, then I can keep pulling the thread. I can start patching this information into my tables, into my dashboards, into whatever it is that it makes sense. And now I'm just going to speed this up because it's just going to be picking and creating the different glossaries based on the information that it's found in the system. And finally, it's going to show them to me. I can comment them. I can figure out, are they good enough? Do I need to change something to make a bit of more sense of the information that it's there? But as you can see, AskCollate helps us finding the right pieces of information, be it structured, be it not structured, and helps us speed up this translation process of figuring out the vast amounts of information that we have in our system and put it in a place, in this case, the glossary, that will help us activate it and use it further. And with that being said, Thomas, I'm going to pass the word to you so that you can play with the rest of the use case.
Thank you, Peter. Let me quickly share my screen. All right, guys. For this demo, I'm going to be serving the data analyst role, and I've been asked to analyze how are the eco-friendly products of our company performing, right? So I'll just go right away and simply ask that to AskCollate. I need to assess how are my eco-friendly products performing and help me in searching for gold certified assets. I want to make sure that I'm using production ready data, right? And like as Pere showed, only in a matter of seconds, it is able to go through my entire data catalog, go through Snowflake, Redshift, all of this, and it found some relevant results there, right? Assets from Snowflake, Redshift, Tableau. And for this particular scenario, I'll tell it to focus on Snowflake, and I'll start with some market share analysis. I'll ask it to give me, how are my eco-friendly performing in terms of market share. So that's what I'll request as a follow-up prompt to AskCollate. And there are a couple of things going on here behind the scenes, but on a high level, it is actually transforming our natural language query into a SQL query, and it's going to be executing that against the actual data warehouse and bringing back the summary of the results, right? Once that's done, it will be analyzed and it will be telling us interesting insights here. For instance, it is telling us that roughly 40% of the sales have come from eco-friendly product, which is significant there. And we are also receiving the SQL that was actually executed, right? For reference, for storage, if we want to execute it on a follow-up occasion, or actually in the data warehouse. And after that, we also have some capabilities here in AskCollate to generate some visualizations, right? Now, the cool things here is that these visualizations are kind of live. We can iterate on them. So for instance, maybe this a bit too much of a bright green color for me. So I'll just ask it to make it a bit more subtle, make it on a dark green. And also maybe this description may be a bit too, we could take advantage of this ink, let's say, and make it a bit more insightful right away. So that's what I'll be asking AskCollate. And we can keep iterating on this until it serves our purposes, until we're happy with it. Here, as you can see, it changed the color, it changed the description. And just for one final iteration, here, these two data points add up to 100% of the market share. So maybe there's a case here for a donut chart. And that's what I'll be asking in this following prompt, right? And also maybe I want to highlight the share of the eco-friendly products. So I'll also tell it to just keep it in gray color, the non-eco-friendly share. And yeah, that's what I'll be sharing here. So we can do this. We can do some iterations, execute some other SQL analysis, some other plots, and one by one, we'll be building our dashboard in seconds without actually leaving the chat. Cool. I also told it here to make it in percentages, which is what it's doing now, which is what it did actually. And just to wrap it up, I'll tell it to tell me what are our bestseller, let's say, what are our best performing eco-friendly products. And this is let's say the last query that I'll be requesting to AskCollate. And as I said, here it's a lot of steps going on behind the scenes and in order to give us these final results. So it will be working through it, executing the query. We can always go and see step by step what is going on. And so we get a sense on the progress that we're making. And here we see the results. We can see the organic cotton t-shirt as the best seller, followed by a toothbrush, so on and so forth. Again, we have access to the SQL query. Now, I also notice here that there's some negative revenue for the beach chair product, which is kind of weird. And this is probably requiring some further analysis, some data quality analysis, which is actually serving the floor for the next demo that we'll be having, which will be served by the engineering team, in which we'll look at what may be happening here and why we're receiving a negative revenue for a given product. But just to wrap it up, only in a couple of minutes, we were able to search through our entire data catalog. We transformed business questions into SQL queries and actually executed them against our data warehouse. We created and iterated on some visualization until it reached the point that we wanted and our style. And we even caught up a potential data quality issue. This all through conversational manner in a matter of seconds and without actually leaving the chat. So yeah, now I'll leave the floor to Teddy, who will be continuing with this.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Thomas. So let me share my screen. All right, perfect. So as Thomas mentioned, we are going to now go over the observability side. So understanding what is happening with the negative values inside our product revenue. So we'll take on the hat of a data engineer. So so the first thing that we generally will want to understand is, okay, I have some customers 360 table that is aggregating a bunch of different data for my eco product. And I would want to understand how is that data fed, how is that data generated, right? So we can go ahead and simply AskCollate, right? And then if AskCollate finds the same occurrence across different services, it will tell you, right? So that you as a human can, specify and specify which table you are trying to look for, right? And so as you can see, once we specify, then AskCollate is smart enough to go ahead and generate the results. And we'll have the dynamic graph of our lineage as well as a summary of the data that are available inside AskCollate, right? So we have that full summary that is present that we can actually interact with that dynamic component that you are probably familiar with when you are interacting with Collate. That same dynamic component is now present inside AskCollate, and you can have a quick understanding of how data are generated. Perfect. So then the next step that we want to do once we have an understanding is to see, do we have any failing test for that specific table, right? So we have a summary, and here we have no tests that have been defined for that specific table, right? So we have some components that are missing, right? And so what we want to do now is to, further that analysis and try to understand, okay, we have no data quality tests that have been defined here in our customer 360 table, but do I have any anomalies that do exist inside the tables that are feeding my customer 360 table, right? And you can see that AskCollate will start analyzing the profiling data, the sample data, the metadata, basically kind of gathering information about these tables that are generating the customer 360 table. And it will give us a full summary, a full report of the information that it finds, right? And we can see that it has highlighted two critical anomalies inside two tables actually that are used to generate our customer 360 table, right? We can see order items as some negative value, right? So that's what we have seen in the total amount. And we can also see that inside our product table, right? Product table that is feeding into those tables, we have some negative unit price, right? And from there, we can quickly see that we most likely should not have a negative unit price for a specific product, right? Because generally, customers spend money to purchase product, and we don't give them money when they are purchasing product. So that is probably something that we should go ahead and start addressing by resolving it inside our table. But we should also start monitoring it, right? As we can see, we had no previous data quality tests that were generated for that specific tables that are used for our customer 360 table. So we probably want to start adding data quality tests, right? So we can either manually add it, or we can ask AskCollate to go ahead and, based on the context that it has on the metadata that are used to generate that table, the statistics from this table, the anomalies that it has found, right? We can simply ask AskCollate to go ahead and create those data quality tests, right? So that's what we did with our prompt right here. And we can see that AskCollate is starting to generate data quality test case based on the context that it has available to cover those anomalies that it has found in the previous test. Okay, so we can see that it went ahead and generated multiple data quality tests, right? It will give us a summary of what it added, why it added it, and which dimension of data quality it has covered, right? So think about completeness, validity, and whatnot. And so we can simply go ahead and click on our table, refresh it, and then we can see that we have a batteries of tests that have been created. And then if we're filtering for unit price tests, we can see that we have a suite of data quality tests that have been generated, including a unit price range. So we can see that quickly in a few minutes, we're able to go from investigation to resolution and to remediation with AskCollate. And now I will pass it on to Harsha that is going to cover the last step in AskCollate.
All right, thanks, Teddy. I hope you can see my screen. We all know the real work happens in Slack. Whatever we showed, it's cool, but I think the chaos and the work happens in Slack. So all the goodness that you have seen, what we have showed so far, can be achieved through video working as well. Most of our data team, most of our data users, probably talking about what's happening to my pipeline today. Can you give me the customer lifetime value? All of these questions can be asked to AskCollate right from the Slack. So we started some threads already, but to make the demo easier, while that is happening, I can ask the question of, show me customers data. Roughly, I don't know where the customer data is. I'm just asking AskCollate to do that. So while it's doing its thinking, let's proceed on to the threads that we have done. So in this case, Pere asks, do we have any certified assets in Snowflake, right? Are there any gold and silver and bronze certifications? So it's using AskCollate right here, all the context it has. It's able to give you all the tables, what's the column count, when it's last updated, all the necessary information that I need. And also there's a handy link. I can just click on it, go there, and kind of find more details. And you can actually have further conversations. I'm not going to stop here. I want to kind of have more conversations about Customer 360 seems what I want, what data we have it on this, right? So it's able to show that it's actually view. It's coming from this particular schema and the database when actually tagged, what is the tiering, all the information that we need from a data assets part of it. You can also look at what is kind of handy details of what is upstream, what are the upstream assets that are influencing this particular product. And you can go on understanding more details about the Customer 360 table right here in the Slack. Now, what happens if I am actually looking at, I'm a business user, I do not know where the data is, what the concepts are, and I deal with customer lifetime value. There's something metric I need to report. I'd like to have it in weekly basis. Someday I came in and I just asked, can you provide me with the customer lifetime value? And again, without knowing any context of the data, where the data is stored and everything else. Now, what AskCollate did it's actually found the right table for me and showed me the columns in it. And it also kind of found related terms, metrics, and dashboards. If there is an existing dashboard, I don't need to do, again, my whole work today. I can actually find the link and go there, find the value, and report it to whoever I need to send it to, right? And the other things with the glossary terms and everything else, what is the metric? Where are we kind of putting the truth of this metric in itself? All of these details right here handily can be provided. Now, not just satisfied with what the assets that I found, which is great, but I want the data in itself. Now, we are focusing from metadata discovery and understand where the values are, what are the definitions, what are the tables that we have and dashboard we have, to actually getting the data in itself. So when I ask this question, it's able to retrieve the data in itself. But interestingly, it also noticed there are data quality issues, which is all the metric fields that I needed to calculate this particular, the metric, total orders, total revenue, containing null values, which is not great. Only the customer is in segmented classification of the pop rate, which means this is not the very well-maintained table that we have, and we only have one table of such, and showed me, hey, all these details are showing me a bad data here, and the SQL query that it is actually used to generate the data. Now, as a user of this data, I can go and proceed, hey, who owns the customer lifetime value data? Because there seems to be something wrong. I need this data. I can start kind of having conversations with that particular person's right here. So I can tag them, bring them into this conversation saying that, hey, why are we not maintaining customer lifetime value? This is the metric that drives quarterly performance or whatnot. Now, on the other side of the equations are like, show me customers' data, giving me all these tables that I have. I can ask more details. Like typing is fun. So while it's doing, again, the interaction with AskCollate and the OpenMetadata knowledge graph is so inherently easy, and it gives you the context where you're working and becomes a lot more easier. So now imagine there is an incident going on, data quality that we have shown so far. You can just tag the AskCollate with that particular conversation and get relevant details, such as, hey, where this particular test case is failing. Are there any sample data issues? Are there any test issues? Are there any pipeline that ran slowly or didn't run today? So all of these details where you get inundated with all of these messages right in Slack. Now you can use AskCollate to help you out and quickly get to the RC of that. While we are talking about this, it's actually showing me, like, when I ask for a customer's table, what is the schema? What are the DBT models that is actually doing? Actually, it's coming from 3 staging tables right here, and a summary of this, and including data quality details right here. So I don't need to kind of leave my working space or working with my colleagues right here and ask that tag maybe in this case study, hey, what's going on with this failed test case? So again, making this collaborative effort where you're working on bringing all the greatness of AskCollate, not just through the interface that we developed in the Collate, but also into Slack where you're working with. I think that what concludes my demo for today with Slack. After you, Nick.
Excellent. Thank you all for sharing that great demo. We wanted to jump now and provide a yearly recap of OpenMetadata and some of my favorite statistics that I've seen about the growth of OpenMetadata this year in 2025. It's been a great year for OpenMetadata, and wanted to highlight all of the really exciting growth in the style of, you may be familiar with, Spotify Wrapped. So as I'm going through these statistics, if you had like a top artist or anything that you'd like to share from your Spotify Wrap, please put it in the chat. And then also, if you have any questions about anything that you've seen so far in the meetup, please feel free to ask those now. We can get to those very shortly. So through the year, we've seen some really great growth in terms of number of contributors. As you can see here, number of GitHub stars have grown pretty massively over the course of 2025. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is, like, the biggest area of growth that we've seen is in our Slack community, right? So that's been really exciting to get to know all of you in that channel, be able to introduce myself, ask questions, and hear some amazing stories. Like, I met David, who just presented earlier. I met him through our Slack, right? So it's been really an honor to get to know you all there and get to hear some of your stories about how you are solving problems with data, how you are improving your teammates' jobs and responsibilities and making those easier. And it's a pleasure to be involved and hear those stories, and it's really exciting to hear how OpenMetadata is a part of them. So please feel free to join that Slack and to reach out to me. I think there's a lot more stories that we can uncover in 2026, and I'd love to hear them. Digging into more details on our review of this year for GitHub, we've had thousands of commits, thousands of closed issues across, by my count, over 70 total releases of OpenMetadata. So, well over a weekly cadence as we are closing these issues. Those are turning into new releases that is getting even better OpenMetadata versions into your hands. So it's been really exciting to watch that cadence not only be so quickly, but start to pick up here, especially at the end of the year. Through all of those releases, we had 5 iterations of OpenMetadata, going from OpenMetadata 1.7 was released earlier this year, all the way to now. We just got OpenMetadata 1.11. So OpenMetadata 1.7 was adding things like autopilot and new connectors, revamping the UI. OpenMetadata 1.8 introduced the MCP server, OpenMetadata's embedded MCP server, which has been great. I've really loved to hear how creative some of the community has been in implementing that with the rest of their data stack. OpenMetadata 1.9 brought even more new connectors and revamped the UI again, but then we also saw data contracts there. Data contracts is if the MCP server has been showcasing people's creativity, data contracts, I think, has really been showcasing people's utility, right? And we're really seeing people accomplish a lot of useful work there with data contracts and think about their data and execute and act on it in a lot more efficient ways. So that's been exciting to see data contracts get into everyone's hands here at OpenMetadata. OpenMetadata 1.10 revamped the OpenMetadata SDK In Open Metadata 1.11, as we saw in our last meetup, introduced data quality as code, dimensionality in in data quality tests, things like that. So it's been really a huge year as far as new features and new releases in Open Metadata. A Slack recap, there's been over 35,000 total replies and messages and posts over the year, which is nuts. It's been really exciting to be able to speak with you all. There's been, you can see there's been under 7,000 posts, but over 35,000 total replies. So we're having conversations there, right? It's about 5 total messages for each post. So it's been great to dig in deeper to your guys' open metadata environments, look into what's happening, and make sure that they are as easy as possible. Open metadata is as easy as possible for you to use. It's working as effectively as it can. And really, I love to see not only that these number of posts are so high, but how many of them are turning into conversations, how many are turning into resolutions, how many are turning into issues that are bringing open metadata, to the next level. And we've seen thousands of different contacts, with Slack members. We're getting a variety of different people from across the world really interacting with each other in that Slack. Wanted to provide a quick YouTube recap as well. By my count, we had 67 new videos this year on our Open Metadata YouTube channel. There was over 166,000 views and almost 500,000 minutes watched of open metadata material on YouTube, which is amazing to me. And I really appreciate all your interest in the community as it's evolved throughout the year. 2 of our most popular videos I have here. We just saw Harsha's demo. We had an Ask the Experts video with Harsha, talking about some of the foundations and the story behind open metadata. And then one of our most popular videos was actually last month's webinar. So it's been great to see that momentum grow, and kind of as we continue to put out material on that YouTube, it continues to be, it's as healthy as ever as far as people viewing it and people enjoying those videos. So I really appreciate all the support there. Through that, and the last meetup, we had 2 great guest speakers. We just saw David present in a community spotlight today. We've had a number of different guest speakers throughout the year at our Open Metadata community meetups. We started with the Carrefour team in Sao Paulo before checking out how Gorgeous uses Open Metadata in Paris. Nicolas Gutierrez Garcia from Ednon showed us Open Metadata from Spain. Then we had Mustafa at Talentsys. He showed us Open Metadata from France, but shortly after set up shop in Morocco. So I wanted to place him here because right after we went back to France and Eamon showed us how NW is using Open Metadata. We went all the way to Japan and saw Kansai Airports. Nancy from MoneyPoint showed us some of her favorite contributions she's made into Open Metadata. We saw the latest from Airflow 3, which is now available with Open Metadata from Kenton at Astronomer. Rizal had a great demo and introduction to MCP out of Boston, where she's leading the Blocks open source DevRel team. And then we just saw David from Belgian showing how VRT is using Open Metadata as well. So really traveled the globe and been able to see a lot of different stories. I think there's even more to tell in 2026. So please reach out to me. Would love to hear your stories. And then, if willing and able, it doesn't matter where you are, as you can see, it doesn't matter, what you've done with Open Metadata. I think you have a story to tell. And I think, would love to use this platform to share it with others. So please reach out to me. And I think that there's a lot more that we can say in the new year. But I really appreciate all of the work that has gone into those community spotlights. We had 10 great ones. We had we had hundreds of new contributors to Open Metadata. We had a lot of different Open Metadata implementations go into production. We had a lot of new Open Metadata users in our Slack. But we wanted to award, one particular developer with the Open Metadata Developer of the Year. So in our last meetup, we opened up a poll and we had people vote on who they thought should be our first Open Metadata Developer of the Year, and I'm happy to present to you all 2025's Open Metadata Developer of the Year, and they prepared a quick video for
I'm
us.
truly honored to receive the Open Metadata Developer of the Year award. I want to sincerely thank the entire Open Metadata AskCollate team for their trust, their vision, and the incredible work they are doing to evolve this tool. Open Metadata has grown so much thanks to everyone's dedication, and it's really inspiring to be part of this journey. I also want to congratulate all of the Open Metadata contributors and community spotlight speakers this year. Let's just make sure that we're going to keep working together and making Open Metadata the best open data governance platform out there. Thank you so much. Let's keep growing together.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Amen, and congrats on that award. And it's been a great year, right? As I tried to maybe not mention too many times, but I'm really excited about 2026. I'm excited to share more stories like Amen's and like David's. And I think to echo him, let's keep going and keep growing together and see, where Open Metadata can take us. So with that, we had a number of different questions come into our Q&A. We've been able to discuss those. Please get any questions that you may have. It looks like we have one open question. I've had a number of answered questions that we can take online as well. One of the first questions that came to us is asking, can AskCollate incorporate information from any Open Metadata connector? So, we answered that, but if maybe Pere, you'd like to talk about the type of information AskCollate can access.
I can address that. So we are giving the permissions based on the user who logged in. So if I have access to, let's say, customers table, I can ask the model to generate the query for that, only the metadata, but the data itself is not getting to the model itself, right? So that's a great benefit of using Open Metadata /Collate. In this, you have such a rich knowledge graph of all the metadata that we have established and the semantics of the metadata, which is what is a customer, what is the customer lifetime value, what is the customer ARR. All these semantics are encoded into our knowledge graph. So the LLM is exposed to that metadata itself. But when I ask, hey, give me the customer ARR, it's actually benefiting from the semantics of that is stored in the Collate, and Open Metadata using that and generating a query and using my connection that I logged in. If I'm an SSO user, I'll use my session to ask Snowflake, Databricks, and other warehouses that answer. But the answer itself comes to me, not to the LLM, and not exposed to all of the data.
Excellent. Thanks, Harsha. And it looks like we have time for maybe one more question. We had someone come in and ask, does Open Metadata have a public roadmap? And we'll be discussing the roadmap in the next meetup. So I think that's a great place to wrap things up today and really look forward into the new year, where we'll be sharing our roadmap for Open Metadata. We'll be sharing new community spotlights, and I'm really looking forward to the new year. So you can find us in that next month's meetup. Join us on our Slack, and please feel free to give us a star on GitHub, follow us on X, and check out Collate and the AskCollate demonstration that you saw today. Thanks, everyone. It's been a great year, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all again soon.